All right, I'm going to show you the much requested Tinder style transition. And this is super easy to do in Flinto. I've got two screens here that show two different photos, and you're going to be able to swipe left and right to reject the photo or accept it, or tap the buttons. And so I've got these two photos here, but they're actually groups. And inside of the group is the photo, and then an accept and a reject button. So I've faded those out, but I can bring them back here so you can see. So those are going to be used inside the transition, which is why they're invisible to start with. All right, so let's start with the reject button on the dog screen. I'm going to use the right-click drag shortcut to create a link that goes over to the face screen, and I'm going to create a new transition. I'm going to call this Judgment. Now, anytime you have a transition that appears to take place in one screen, you usually want to align the screens on top of each other. But you need the start of the transition to look like the start screen, which is the one with the dog on it. Now, since these screens look almost identical, all I need to do is bring the dog up to the top. And so the dog photo is here in the photo area group on the dog screen, and I can drag it right up to the very top of the whole layer list outside of its screen. And there it is on top. So the starting position looks good now. So let me toggle to the end and move that dog photo off to the left. And I'm going to give it a bit of a rotation, so it looks like it's kind of flying off. All right, so that looks cool. I've got kind of a crazy easing going on here, so let me change the timing. And that looks pretty good. Okay, the next thing that I want to happen is for the reject button, or the reject icon, to show up. So I'm going to fade that in. And all I'm doing is just setting up the end state of the transition, and the start state is already taken care of for me. So that looks right, but I would like this X button to fade in a bit quicker than the photo is moving, because I want the user to see that button or that icon before the photo moves off the edge of the screen. So I can come down here in the timing inspector, and I'm going to choose a different easing curve that fades in a bit faster and then slows down, and I'll make the duration a bit lower so that it comes in faster. All right, that looks pretty good. If I hold Shift and toggle the transition, you can see that that X icon appears before the photo slides off the screen, which is what I wanted. All right, so I'm going to save that transition, and I'm going to create a link on the other X button on the other screen, and I'm going to use this right-click drag shortcut to quickly create that link, and I'll choose that same Judgment transition that I just created. Now, the reason this transition works with no further modification is because I use the same layer names, photo area, accept and reject. It's the same on both screens. So the transition knows how to work. It knows how to, which layers to apply the animations to. So let's check out the preview. Now when I hit the reject button, the transition works just like I set it up. And it works on both screens, which is really cool. Now what's great about Flinto is that you can really easily tweak things. So if I want to go back in and edit this transition, I can click this edit button or hit Command T, which is the shortcut. So the transition works pretty well, but it would be even cooler if this photo behind scaled up. And I should switch back to spring timing here because I want it to have a little bit of a bounce. Cool, so that slides up. Maybe even better if it fades in, and I could have it rotate too. So really easy to try different things like that. Okay, maybe this one I want to rotate a little bit more. You can test things out and kind of push the boundaries, see where it gets too crazy. Okay, the next thing I want to do is set up the gestures, because the funnest thing with this transition is to swipe the photo to reject it. When I link over to this screen, I'll choose the left swipe gesture, choose the same Judgment transition, and then I'll do the same thing on this one. So when I swipe left on this photo, it's going to go over to that one, Judgment, left swipe, done. Now, of course, in a real scenario, you're going to have more than two photos, but two is all that's required to kind of test out this interaction. So it's a little bit funny that I keep swiping between the same two photos, but that's enough to get the idea across. And you could always add more. Cool, so now I can swipe it, and that's really fun. Especially when you test this out on device. It's really satisfying to see the slight bounce of that photo that zooms in and be able to swipe it. And it's really cool that I'm using the same transition for the X button and for the swiping. So 4 different interactions and just one transition that I had to create. Now you can use the exact same techniques to create the same effect for the accept button and just do everything, add an additional gesture here with a right swipe. But there's also a more advanced way to do it, and I'm going to show this in another video, but you can set this whole thing up using only a single transition for all of the interactions, rejecting and accepting, which will allow you to share properties like the way the photo zooms in after you've accepted or rejected. You don't want to have to recreate those. So there's a way to do that. It's a little bit more of an advanced technique, so I'll show that in a separate tutorial.